Wade. Councilmember Regal. Councilmember Moody.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. And if you would like to join us, please, I'd like to ask Councilmember Moody to lead us in an invocation and a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Before I start, I wanted to remind everybody about the proper way to pledge to the flag. That when you say one nation and everybody stops and then says under God, there is no comma in the Pledge of Allegiance. It's one nation under God. So I know the council is starting to get that right. So let's see if we can all do it right tonight. So if you would join me in prayer, please. Dear God, we come before you this evening acknowledging all the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us individually, upon our city, state, and nation. We are also mindful of and ask that you comfort and strengthen those that are homeless, suffering loss, illness, and broken relationships. Lord, our city is confronted by so many problems, and as we look at these problems through our eyes, we only see giants and barriers and obstacles that are insurmountable and unsolvable. It is only when we look at these same problems through your eyes that we find solutions. We need to be reminded that in you all things are possible. So Lord, we ask that all things we face, say, or do are pleasing in your sight. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I do want to let everyone know that if there was the very unlikely event that we needed to evacuate the building, that these are our two main exit doors from here, and there's one over to my room to the room to the right. Do not use the elevator if that were to occur. Please use the stairs going down, and then we would all commonly exit the singular stairway out the front door. I would like to propose to council that we amend the agenda and add one item, and that's to ask council to consider extending the temporary moratorium on James Island. It's set to run out next month, and the Planning Commission deferred the matter one meeting, and so it got delayed. And so unless we extend the moratorium, you know, it'll end before the matter comes back to council. So I'd like to propose that we extend the temporary moratorium on James Island until December 31st of this year. So I'll need we need a
We add it to the agenda.
This is putting on the agenda, right?
First, to amend the agenda, we have a motion to amend the agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And now if council doesn't have a, doesn't want to put it off till later in the meeting, we could just go ahead and vote on it now to extend the moratorium until December 31st. Councilmember Seekings.
So the date we're going to extend it to is what date, I'm sorry?
December 31st, 2017.
Okay, when is the Planning Commission going to take this up?
They plan to they have already taken it up. They made a couple of modifications. It just, given the timing, doesn't come back to us until November 13th, and apparently the moratorium would have already expired. Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, even though we will extend it to December 31st, I think you said, right? Is it December 31st? December 31st. I would like to make sure that we still have in place the ability to extend it further if necessary.
Right. There's no prohibition in this extension that would disallow us from extending it again if need be. But hopefully our overlay district will be in place by then.
The reason why I bring this up, Mayor, is I don't think that the overlay district is the be-all and all.
That's correct.
When we went forward, we talked about a comprehensive approach to look at the drainage, to look at traffic and transportation. So for me, I'm sure that this body will pass the overlay overwhelmingly, but there's still some issues on the island that we need to address.
Yes,
and that's why I don't want the December 31st date to end it, but if we can still go forward after the 31st, that's fine with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I entertain a motion? So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, I have, believe it or not, we didn't have any proclamations tonight. I don't know quite what to do. We normally have 3 or 4 proclamations. But in lieu thereof, I do have a letter that I would like to share with council that just arrived this afternoon from the chief of the Hazard Mitigation Assistance Branch, the Mitigation Division of the Federal Emergency Management Association, or FEMA. And this is to inform the city that the acquisition and demolition, or the mitigation program that was proposed to buy the properties at Bridgepoint Townhome Community has been approved. And this is awesome. And it's approved in the amount of $7,775,715. The federal share will be $5,839,286. So we will be required to put up a 25% match from the city, and so we'll have to bring this back to Ways and Means at a future meeting. But I will note that there's a schedule of the approval. It's done really over a year's time, so we'll be, approving various sums over the next year. So I want to particularly thank Councilmember Regal, whose district this is in, for supporting this effort from the very beginning. The staff put together this application over 2 years ago. The really amazing help of our federal partners, being Senator Scott and Graham and Representative Sanford. And then finally, on a visit just about 3 weeks ago, that myself and staff went up to visit Governor McMaster and shared with him the plight of this grant application and how it had not been approved yet. And so I believe he helped kind of with, everybody had been working on it for a long time, but I think he kind of helped us push it over the finish line. And so anyway, we're very pleased that it's been approved after a couple of years, and excited that we can move forward with it. Councilmember Regal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank you and staff for your continued efforts and continued pressures on this very important issue to my constituents in District 10. This persistent flooding over the last 3 or 4 years has become a real problem. And thanks to the mayor, we met with Mark Sanford, Senator Sandy Singh, and Representative Lynn Bennett in Paul Knipper's kitchen, which had been flooded and damaged. You all saw the papers, wonderful Post and Courier's pictures. So I can't thank everyone involved. I don't want to name everybody. I'll miss somebody. But what a great effort. I thank everyone involved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Waring.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor, and everybody involved. Is this only for the Bridgeport, or did that grant application include other addresses as well?
We have a preliminary email notification that there's another grant that will cover some of the other homes that were in our original application, but this official letter that we received today is just for Bridgepoint, but Laura's may be correcting me.
Yes,
Okay.
It's actually got 4 other properties on this grant, and then there's a second grant that we've also applied for that was approved by the state, so I expect it to come through the process too, and it's a number of other single-family homes, and some of them in areas off of in Forest Acres. So
I know there was one in particular involving one of our first responders, a fireman, and I think it was along the lines of a grant to help lift the house up.
that's separate from these. These are all acquisitions and demolitions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory, did you have a comment? Councilmember Regal?
Maybe we should explain, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the FEMA grants allow us to, the federal government to reimburse us for 75% of the appraised value, pre-flooding market value of the homes.
That's correct.
The city and the state will make up the remaining 25%. So our goal and hope, gentlemen and ladies, is that we'll make these people whole, and that's the plan that should happen. In addition, we want to entertain at some point where those homes are located and possibly consider that a park or green space or something like that that we can give back to the community and utilize in that way. But I just want to explain what the numbers meant, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
So it was clear from the repetitive flooding that these homes had suffered year after year that it was a bad investment for the federal flood insurance program to be paying again and again for repairs to be made to the home. I had a visit at Mayor's Night In from one of the families this past month, and they had bought their house in early 2002 or 3 for $158,000. And so far, the federal government has paid over $300,000 in repairs on a $158,000 home. So, it just makes all the sense in the world to, I know it seems kind of extreme as a mitigation to actually buy somebody's property, but that's the level of repairs that were going on these homes again and again. And our requirement will be that the structures be removed, that they be demolished, and no replacement homes ever go on the property. So it can become a park, it could become an additional retention area for flooding, for drainage, and particularly there at Bridgepoint, where you've got a pretty good sizable piece of real estate, it could become a significant drainage retention area to help with the flooding problem going forward. So I view it as a good investment. All right, so we have Councilmember Williams.
No, he had the green space. He has
Okay. We good? So we have public hearings this evening, and our first public hearing is just to receive input from the public, if you would like, regarding next year's 2018 City of Charleston budget. Would anyone like to be heard about our budget for next year? Yes, sir. Please step forward. State your name and address.
Muhammad Idris, 1054 King Street. I'm pretty happy that we have this discussion on the budget. This city was built with the word of God, but with the spirit of the devil. My mission is to bring Charleston back into the United States of America and spirit in action. It is no accident that they call this area the Battery. And after hearing all this going on tonight, but the money spent here and the money spent there, and it's no accident that they say that this city is below sea level. Now they call it the Battery, and they say we are below sea level. And when you see something, you see with your eyes. And this city is not level. As Councilman Lewis been saying for over the years, all these different offices should be in one building. And we wouldn't have to keep on spending the money like we are spending. We're down here in this area they call the Battery, and I tell you like this, you all are blind as a bat. And it is no accident that they're planning heavy development west of the Ashley River Bridge, starting on Farley Road. And it is no accident that they are planning to spend $51 million on the Citadel. Now it is just a coincidence. These actions show that Charleston is still up the United States of America in deeds and spirit. What I'm saying is that the secession is still being conducted by the corruptors of this city. And to give you further support of what I'm saying is that Mayor Raleigh, the former mayor, after leaving this office of mayoral irresponsibility, he went back to his alma mater, the Citadel, a place where he joined Devine Sharma, the former president of Standard & Poor's, who charged America and 211 was being below the AAA standard. In other words, he was saying that America credit was below world standard, while at the same time Mayor Raleigh disassociated Charleston credit rating from America by saying that Charleston had AAA credit rating. Now, these two people are working side by side at the Citadel, a place that shot the first shot that started the Civil War. As I said, my mission is to bring Charleston back into the United States of America so that they can recognize Philadelphia as being the #1 city of America. As I said, they call this area the Battery. And I must say, the leadership of this city is blind as a bat. Also, this city is below sea level. They do not deal on a level manner. They are unbalanced. And when you are blind, you are capable of doing foolish things. That is why they are building on Farley Road, near Windermere. In closing, this definition for the Citadel is a fortress protecting or dominating the city, or a meeting place, hall of the Salvation Army. Since we have a police department, who's supposed to be doing a good protecting us? Why should we have a Citadel in the city of Charleston? I didn't know you get but 2 minutes when you're talking in public hearing, but I know y'all changed the rule with me.
Well, thank you. That was 3 minutes plus some. And
Yeah, but I didn't know, I thought you were.
yes, sir.
You have zoning, y'all let people talk all night long.
And we'll be glad to let
I know
you.
when you have citizen participation.
I'll be glad to let you finish, sir.
No, that's okay. No,
Yeah.
keep on going.
Yeah. So
Like I say, you're blind as a bat.
for the public hearing matters, we would ask everyone to keep your remarks to a limit of 3 minutes. So would anyone else would like to make a comment about our city budget for 2018? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, my name is Alyssa Lizzo, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Charleston Pro Bono Legal Services. I'm the director, and as a nonprofit that provides free civil legal aid to the city of Charleston, we're actually located just down the street on Church Street. We submitted a grant request in August for your review and consideration. Sensitive to time restraints and tonight's agenda, I will keep my remarks brief. Charleston Pro Bono is a local nonprofit that's been serving the city of Charleston residents since 2004. Our predecessor, the Neighborhood Legal Assistance Program, started way back in 1967. In fact, this year, 2017, marks the 50th anniversary of pro bono civil legal aid in Charleston, a milestone which is definitely worth celebrating, and one that earlier this summer, the mayor blessed our organization with a proclamation. Over the years, we've been fortunate enough to receive funding from the city of Charleston, and we have proven to be good stewards of these funds. You know, sitting here hearing about all these funds and millions of dollars and $250,000, I'm before you tonight urging you to consider my request for $8,700, just to keep things in perspective.
What a bargain.
So over the years, we have been fortunate to receive such funding from the city of Charleston. In fact, the grant funding provided by the city of Charleston for the current grant year of 2017 provided the necessary seed money for our organization to create a full-time attorney position dedicated to housing-related legal issues. We listened to our community, we heard the need, and we are addressing their concerns. This year, we are seeking funding to host educational outreach clinics at various nonprofits and community sites throughout the city of Charleston. These outreach initiatives, hosted by Pro Bono with the assistance of volunteer private bar attorneys, will provide educational materials and programs to educate the city's low-income residents about their legal options. Example topics will include landlord-tenant law, family law to include child support and visitation, estate planning, and kinship caregivers. The demand for no-cost or low-cost legal aid exceeds current available services offered within the city of Charleston. We know this is a problem. Some of the council members are attorneys themselves, because we are hearing it from the judiciary and court personnel. They're telling us there is a marked increase of pro se, those representing themselves in court. But when adequately prepared, such litigants are able to effectively represent themselves throughout the court process. If properly educated on respective rights and responsibilities, our community is in a much better position to level the playing field, advocate for themselves, and fight injustice. South Carolina ranks 50 out of 50. That's last place for civil legal aid. And for every 10,000 living in poverty, our state has less than one attorney providing free civil legal services. So what's our plan? We will host 25 clinics from January to December of 2018 with nearly 400 anticipated beneficiaries. We will address two critical community needs.
Thank you very much.
Indulgence, may I just finish?
Please.
One, being educated on rights and responsibilities, and two, learning how to represent yourself in court. The numbers don't lie. Our community cannot meet the current need. There is such a thing as a justice gap, and these outreach programs will go a long way in bridging that gap, but we need your help. I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to address the 2018 budget? If not, we'll move ahead to the next item, which is a zoning matter for 445 Meeting Street.
Mayor, you have someone stand up?
If someone wanted to address the budget, please come forward right now.
Yeah, what's in the budget if you want to say something about you?
The 2018 City of Charleston budget. Yeah. Thank you. Please state your name and begin,
My
please.
name is Rosalind Fields, and my address is 5445 Langston Park Drive, North Charleston, South Carolina. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Youth Empowerment Services and those that we serve, I thank you for this opportunity to share with you this evening. I am the founder and executive director of Youth Empowerment Services, better known as YES, which is a nonprofit organization that serves the Tri-County area. I was born and raised in downtown Charleston and taught in the local public schools. While teaching in the public schools, I experienced girls who were falling through the cracks due to at-risk behaviors and a lack of guidance. Youth Empowerment Services was birthed in an effort to reach and serve those girls who are most at risk, to empower them with hope and vision. Our mission is to empower girls through Christian principles to discover and embrace and appreciate their self-worth, leading to a healthy and productive lifestyle. As you know, South Carolina has been named one of the top 5 states in the nation for domestic violence. Community leaders, educators, and parents all agree that in order to combat this and other negative statistics against women in our state, we have to begin early to empower girls before they reach adulthood. This is why YES does what it does, and we have been doing this since 1999, reaching over 6,000 through our various outreach programs. Over 95% of our program participants complete high school. A major outreach for YES is the annual Dream Girls Conference that was designed specifically for at-risk middle and high school minority girls. This conference is the only one of its kind and its magnitude in South Carolina, and it's a catalyst for long-term involvement with YES programs. YES began sponsoring the conference in 2014, and it attracts over 1,600 girls of color, parents, girls from group homes, pregnancy centers from across 63 cities and towns across South Carolina. These attendees also bring revenue to our area. When they come in their buses and they come in their vans, they stay in our hotels, they go to our restaurants, and they visit our malls. We are empowering these girls each and every year. And we want this conference to continue. YES has received inquiries as far as from Bermuda to come to this area for this conference. We are most grateful for those of you who are supporting this conference. Many of you on council have done so. I've talked with the mayor when I've seen him at different community events and shared with him what we're doing. And we hope to have your continued support, and we hope to have your financial support, your prayers as well, to help us to continue. Thank you for this time to speak. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on the budget? Hearing none, now we will go forward to item number 2, the rezoning of 445 Meeting Street. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Members of council will get the display screen going. The particulars of this, as the mayor said, it's 445 Meeting Street. It's a 2.2 acre site. The request is to rezone from general business to mixed-use workforce housing. Of course, that would include the new provision for workforce housing that you all approved a few months ago, which is the 20% minimum workforce housing for 25 years. We'll show you some images of the site. Some information from the comprehensive plan in just a second here. Okay, this is the site, and I'm sure you all are very familiar with it. It's the former Piggly Wiggly and Bilo store right there on Meeting Street. To the south is the Elan Midtown. To the north is the new Courier Square development under construction. To the west is the alley and then the U-Haul site. The aerial image here, another aerial image from the southeast. Street view here. You see the Post and Courier project under construction to the north. And then another image from Spring Street. This is an image from our Century 5 city plan that shows that this is in the middle of an area that's designated for urban core, which calls for our densest type of development in the city. The site is also surrounded by other MU workforce housing zonings, which are the kind of teal color. So this is MU workforce, this is MU as well, MU down here, and MU to the north. So it's smack dab in the middle of other MU workforce housing locations. And then this is an image that shows the heights that were recently approved with the new height district, which would allow for 5 stories at the front and 8 stories at the rear. Because of the recommendations in the Century 5 plan, our staff is comfortable with this, and Planning Commission recommended for the rezoning as well.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? If not, yes, sir.
Would this have anything to do with Franklin C. Federal Clinic?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes, I just want to let the council know that I have spoken to the owner of this particular property, and we were in conversation back and forth that this is only the rezoning of the property, so we can do the workforce mixed-use zoning on that particular property. And so the community have heard about it also, because they went down to the planning and zoning when they had this approved. So they are satisfied with it, and he promised me that we will get together once the plans come up to see what we're going to put on that particular property to make sure that we are working strictly with the community, and once that happens, it'll be back to planning and zoning, it'll be coming back to here. But I'll be working with him to make sure that we're going to have things that the community needs, and that's what he's working on. So I vote for approval that we can go forward with this.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Gregory, then Seekings.
Not just a comment. You know, I really applaud Councilman Mitchell's effort on this one, because we did meet a couple of times to get it. Because I think with this designation, it also affords the opportunity for affordable units. And under our new rules, it's either fee in lieu of or X percentage of units. So I really think it's a good thing for the community, because it will provide the opportunity for affordable units in an area which really, really needs it. So I applaud Councilman Mitchell's efforts on this one.
Councilmember Seekings.
Just a brief comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, this is going to be an interesting project for all of us that goes forward. This is really going to be the test for our new MU zoning. It's a site that could be many things. It also, by the way, for council members, you see it backs up to our newly or soon-to-be newly purchased low line. So large-scale project in the densest part of the city, adjacent to a community and the low line. This is one that really can set the standard going forward for what we can do in an urban core when we're trying to do everything we're trying to do as a city, including taking care of the food blight in the area, making sure we've got affordable housing, building something that people can live, work, and play either in or close to. It's going to be an interesting project going forward. I know the applicants here, we're all sitting very anxiously awaiting to see what it's going to look like when it actually gets unfolded. So the zoning seems to fit. Now let's see what the project looks like. Bring it all to life.
Yes, sir. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Excuse me? Councilmember White, I'm sorry.
Mr. Morgan, it sounds like there is no intended, we've not seen any actual plans at this point.
That's correct.
What the site would be.
That's correct.
But how about what is their current intent, even if it's not on paper? Is it an apartment complex or is it?
I think that it's not set yet, and of course, the MU allows for a range of uses, retail, of course, whole range of retail or residential, institutional, it's pretty much all the different uses you see in the downtown could be on that site.
Mr. Mayor and my colleague, I'm working with the developer. We were planning on having housing there, plus he's working with various grocery stores and pharmacies to see what we're going to do that, but the plan will be coming back to the planning and zoning before everything is finished, and we'll be going to the community. So I'll be working with him 100% to make sure that we get that back in place. So that's what we're working on now, but the plan have not been submitted yet.
And obviously this isn't Councilman Mitchell's district that support these active work with developers, but I just want to make a comment to this, is that the MU zoning, we get more and more of these requests to move properties out of general business into MU. And more it's because of the high level of density that can be put on site for housing. And when I say housing, I'm not talking about affordable housing. I'm talking about high-end apartments and condos, whatever. And there's two things in that. Number one, as we continue to allow this level of density to increase, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's going to continue to drive values of real estate downtown higher and higher and higher, and take it more and more outside of the realm of affordable housing because the dirt gets so high in value. Secondly, this MU zoning, it underparked sites severely downtown. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, we need to be encouraging or I hate to use the word forcing property owners to park their sites properly, and this current zoning does not park in a ratio that's appropriate for being able to handle the kind of parking issues that will occur downtown. And lastly, I get that we're going to be able to take this fee in lieu when we do these types of projects, but in reality, when we do this, the fee in lieu is going to be used on other sites. It's not going to be here. So I just wanted us all to remember, and again, I'm not coming down to property owners, and Councilman Mitchell's worked on this as his district, and I'm supportive of him for that, but we just need to be very mindful that every time we change the zone across this city, we're going away from diversification of uses, which is the intent of what we want in a livable city. Every single project I think that I've seen recently keeps going to this MU zone constantly. And it's just building more and more and more apartment complexes. And I get that there's a need today, but at some point that need is going to slow down. We're going to have a problem with a lot of properties that are going to get caught in that limbo. So again, I just wanted to voice my concern that as we move forward, we really need to take a much more harder look on some of these properties and when we rezone them. And it's about diversity of use in our city. And it's not about always just the highest and best dollar that can be attained on a piece of dirt.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring, did I see your hand up?
You did, but I'll reserve it.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Well, let me just say that given the fact that we increased the requirements for MU to 25% for workforce housing, that directly addresses, your point about affordability. And the requirement also of MU2 is that there be a mixed use. Isn't that right, Mr. Morgan?
Yes,
sir. So we're trying to protect that as well. Yeah.
And I guess I should clarify, when I say affordable housing, it's about affordable housing not to be shipped off somewhere else.
Right.
It's about affordable housing across our entire peninsula. And the people who can no longer afford to live on the peninsula, just because we can create a pocket of dough and go and build it somewhere else, doesn't make it a perfect solution. It's about having people of all walks of life being able to live
Yes, sir.
not just be shipped off somewhere else. So that, I just want to clarify that's my.
I agree. Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
That's always been a sensitivity of mine, Councilman White, that we don't use this program to reconcentrate the poor, that we use this to provide opportunities throughout the communities for people who need affordable housing. So I'm in total agreement with you that if we don't watch it, there is a possibility that we could possibly reconcentrate poverty. So I'm there with you.
Right. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and my colleague, I hear you loud and clear. And this is one of the things that I'm very, very serious about when it comes to housing in the peninsula, also for people to be able to afford. And that's why I say I'm going to be working with the owner 100% on that, and he knows exactly how I feel about it. And he promised me that we're going to work together on this and have housing in there that people can afford on this peninsula. And that's why when this was changed, the MU2, that's what it was changed to for that purpose. And because in that area, you see how that area have been developed, totally different. So but we want a mixture of housing and mixture of people living in all the factors of the city of Charleston and in the peninsula also. So that's why I'm working hard on this particular project.
Thank you. Any further comments? All in favor of the matter, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Morgan, 2178 Coker Avenue.
Yes, sir. Very quickly, this is a recent annexation and a recommendation for zoning of SR1 on James Island.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Morgan.
The next one is in West Ashley at 1944 Woodland Road. Again, a recommendation for newly annexed property for single-family residential SR1.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Council, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, and the next one is 781 St. Andrews Boulevard. This is a recently annexed office structure. The recommendation is for general office for this site.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, and those are pictures of them. And the final public hearing before you is a site that was before you last month that was deferred, and this is the Dill Tract, and it's a very minor amendment to the Dill Tract to orient you to the site, and I think you all are pretty familiar with it, but Folly Road is a little bit to the east, and the Walmart is in this location, and then George Griffith Boulevard cuts across the middle of the Dill Tract over to Riverland Drive. Over here, the Charleston Museum has property to the west on the Stono River. The First Baptist Church owns these properties here. The new church school is going here, and athletic facilities are already in place. I'll show you another image that shows the city park property to the south, and then other residential properties further to the south and to the north. The request is to amend the PUD, there we go. And here it is in the comprehensive plan that shows the campus recommendation for the site. The request is to take a 5-acre section of the undeveloped portion of the property here that First Baptist owns in this location on George Griffith Boulevard, some of which is already has overhead power lines across the front of it, and use it for nonprofit office. So instead of the low-density residential that's recommended in the PUD, which is all those units are used up, instead this 5-acre site could be used for nonprofit office. Given that the overall site backing up to the school property and has other residential in the surrounding area, we felt that that was a very compatible use with those surrounding uses and would be appropriate for the site, and it follows the recommendations of our comprehensive plan. And so staff and Planning Commission recommend approval. I should point out that it is a reduction in the original request from 21 acres for this use to 5 acres.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? It comes before council. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Wilson?
Christopher, what did you mean by when you said all the units were used up?
The residential units on the Dill Tract site are used up. In other words, there was a certain number that was allocated to the Dill Tract site, and those were used up with the completion of the surrounding apartment. I think the last units were built in the apartments that are immediately adjacent here.
So if this is zoned currently for low residential, but all the units are used up,
right,
where does that put us?
It could be institutional uses, school facilities, things like that. But with this amendment, it would allow also a nonprofit office on the site, on this 5-acre site.
But regardless, you cannot build any more residential units on the property.
Correct.
At this point.
I'm sorry, I missed you. I was confused. You asked for comment?
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
It went so fast.
That's fine.
I wanted to comment on this particular issue.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Susan Milliken. I live on James Island, 762 Fort Sumter Drive. This is an item that many of us have been very concerned about for a couple of months now, and I appreciate Christopher working with us and answering our questions. This, of course, is a portion of the Dill Sisters parcel or tract, very large tract, that has been really controversial on James Island for many decades. This is some of the last beautifully wooded land in the Dill Sister property. It's my understanding from reading the 1996 Dill Tract PUD that about 100 acres was put into a low-density residential district. The First Baptist land is 40 acres in that district. So to amend a use to add a nonprofit office in 5 of those acres is not something we're opposed to. But what our concern is the way the draft ordinance before you is drafted. And, you know, it's a matter of just always feeling distrustful. And so when we first looked up the tax map numbers for this property, what we saw in Charleston County tax records was a subdivision of 21 acres with a different tax map number. So you have your 40 within that low-density residential district, and then 20 looks to be split off. And it's confusing to us. So 5 of this 21 will be for the nonprofit office use. This land is beautifully wooded. It has beautiful live oak grand trees, the sprawling ones with moss. You can see in there, yes, there are the big power lines, but we're just so concerned about the way this is worded. And in your ordinance before you, it talks about a not-for-profit office district. And what we kept asking city staff was, why can you not just add the use of nonprofit office to the list of uses in the low-density residential district? You know, just change or modify that original 1996 PUD as little as possible. So we still just feel like this is squishy, and I wish that your legal department would look at it closer. Also, I would urge planning to create a nonprofit office zoning, because this ordinance refers to general office zoning. So there's just a lot of things in here that worry us. It's beautiful land. Obviously, grand tree removal would go before BZA, and we would come and look at that closely, but I wish that you would look at this very, very closely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes, sir. We'll allow you to be heard as well. Please state your name and address.
Marshall Blaylock, and I'm from District 10 in Charleston, and I serve as pastor at First Baptist Church, and I thank you for your interest in the property. Just so you know, our whole idea on this has been, we had 60 acres there. The church has donated 40 acres to the school, which is where the high school is being built. It's part of an agreement with the city years ago to move our high school out of a high-density area down here and put it on James Island with more space and more parking. So we set aside that. So the reason why that division looked that way is because we separated out for the school to own that, and our church foundation owns this property. There was never an intention of subdividing it to build anything else. We've spent $100,000 feeding those trees, and so we love the trees. We think it's a beautiful place, and it's a serene environment. What better place to have students be able to walk through that neighborhood? We hope to have a cross-country track going around through there so the whole community can use it. So we're totally sympathetic with your concerns. This came because one of our church members volunteers for Happy Days, and he said, I'd like to build an office space for Camp Happy Days. And we carved out that 5 acres because there was concern if we zoned the whole 21 acres for office space, it might create suspicion. And I understand that perfectly. So we cut it down just to 5 to mitigate those concerns. And I'm standing here before you today saying it's just for nonprofit offices and Happy Days. There may be another compatible organization that joins them there in the space, but it was simply an act to try to help, and we felt it was compatible with the spirit of the PUD. And I think that I would imagine that the Dill sisters would be happy to have Happy Days on that property.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Since the floor was open again. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, first I want to thank Mr. Blaylock for coming. Never has someone been in so many firefights over a school than Mr. Blaylock. I mean, downtown over to James Island. And I think all this probably is consistent with everything that's going on James Island, including us looking at densities, you all having a school there. But this goes back to one of the things that you know sort of gets under my skin a little bit, and that is the amendment of PUDs. I mean, the whole idea of PUDs is they're supposed to sort of be there in place in perpetuity. This is a good amendment, but again, when people bring PUDs to us, they're supposed to be forever, and again, this is changing a little bit. But I do think for those of you over on James Island, you're getting a lot of good stuff going on over there. And if you do have a cross-country track over there, we'd all like to come over and take a little run on it, so it'd be awesome. So just amendment of PUDs, problematic, but this one is probably the right thing to do.
Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, all in favor of the matter, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is approval of our city council minutes from October 10th. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any, Councilmember Moody?
Madam Clerk, I just want a clarification on these minutes, and I couldn't really tell a couple things, and I'm not trying to add any more work because I know you do a great job. But when we have people walking out of the room and back in, and we vote, that doesn't always, from what I'm seeing, show up.
If they're out of the room, their vote indicates that they were not present.
So it wouldn't say unanimous. I was trying to figure out what.
We say the vote was not, well, it would be unanimous for those people who were here. But then we would say council member so-and-so did not vote.
Okay. I didn't see where it said they were absent or not present in the room, because it seemed like it used to. You'd say if somebody left.
We used to do it every time somebody left, and they would go for 2 or 3 minutes and come back.
Right.
So we stopped doing that. If they are out at the time of a vote, then we indicate that they were out during the vote, did not vote on the item.
Okay. I guess I was having some issue with people leaving the room, not listening to a conversation, and then maybe coming back and voting or not voting. I mean, it seems to me like the minutes ought to be a little bit more reflective of just what's going on in the meeting. I'm not trying to put anything on you.
they leave the room, we were doing that, and I mean, everybody.
That's too much.
You know, I'm not asking you to put a reason why they left.
That's right, that's right.
Is that what you're talking about? This
Yeah.
time? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And I vote for approval.
All right. So before us is the approval of the minutes. Any other comments or corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our citizens' participation period. We've got 12 folks signed up, so we'll allow 2.5 minutes per person. And first is Rosalind Fields. Mohammed, you're second.
We heard that.
Yes.
Mayor Teckenberg,
Yes, sir.
council, I put on the desk of you councilmen article from the Post and Courier that took place in 1991, where we recognized the police department. And at that time, the chief of the policemen was Reuben Greenberg, the best police chief we had. And he was up to Jewish community. And I came up with the idea of recognizing the police department and this city for the good work they had done. And we had the East Side DC working with us, community. So we had Muslim, Christian, Jews, black and white, working on this project, working to recognizing the chief policeman of this city. Yet, I was falsely arrested, and I'm angry. I haven't been cleared of that yet. My name has been put in the paper, and I'm gonna be fighting y'all until the day I die, until this thing gets straight. Because it's a shame for what y'all did to me. I brought one of the wisest men on the planet to this city over 16 times, and he gave the solution to many of the problems that y'all have right now. But you'll continue doing the same thing, and like I said earlier, you are blind as a bat. That's why I believe that you're on the battery, and you are below sea level, and I don't mean the water sea. Your level of understanding is very blind. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you're expecting better result. It's a shame before God. Now, I don't know what happened to Mullins. Somebody said he beat his wife, but he resigned. Nobody know what happened to him, but everybody know what happened to me, and everybody know what happened to Councilman Regal. Y'all put all of that in the street and dressed that man down here like I don't know what in this council's chamber. That was a shame before God. You are some evil people. Thank you.
Next, we will have Mark Knapp, followed by Joseph Matthews and Skip Hoagland.
Good evening. Couple of little things. Traffic. 7 o'clock this morning coming into town, and again, the 17 lights are not synchronated. Green, red, red, green, 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 red. I don't know who we got running this thing, but they need to be replaced. Next thing. I call it the mental midget thing. Somebody spent a lot of money at the end of Glen McConnell to make 2 lanes turn left onto Beast Ferry. Now, let me tell you, the reason for that was because people were going down the right lane and sneaking in because the morons that are driving through there can't keep up with traffic because they're probably playing with something else other than a steering wheel. And the real problem is that you've got enough room there to turn 3 lanes into 3 lanes. Now, why you spent the money to just redirect 2 lanes, I'll never know. But obviously, somebody has never dealt with transportation. And then we roll on. And then there's the problem with being constantly accosted every time a certain council member sees me because of some of the things I brought up about not living in the district. You know, I'm at the point where it's about time maybe to start getting a restraining order. Every time I turn around, even last night, somebody shows up behind me, throws down a driver's license, says, "You need to come to dinner." And I'm going, "You don't live there." So, thank you.
Joe Matthews?
Microphone.
Well, the reason why I'm here, good evening, I want to thank the mayor and the councilman and all that, and just to hear me out, but the reason why I'm here today, because I wanted to, there's some things going on in the recreation department that I feel that need to be brought out. I am getting tired of, I've put in 37 years of working with our kids and trying to do it with respect and trying to give these kids a chance to be able to go somewhere in life is working with them and teaching them how to become young men and young ladies. But, you know, the other day that really hurted me, we had a coach that was ejected for a game because we had a referee that did not see this coach for who he was. This coach asked him a question. He tell the coach that, "I don't want to hear it." You know, and at the end of the day, this same coach was ejected. Why? Because this ref had something personal against him. You know, I feel that at that point we had several city staff that working out there saw what's going on, but it seemed to me like this coach was ejected, and when he got ejected, at the end of the day, I asked the official, I said, "What was the reason for you ejecting this young man?" He told me that I don't have to answer you. But at the end of the day, all I'm saying right now today is that I'm hoping that I sent a letter. I passed these letters out today because I wanted y'all to see what's going on with our city personnel department. Because right now, they got to be some changes because as I'm giving 37 years of my life and I've always been faithful working with our community each and every year. And it bothered me because, you know, I'm kind of upset because I seen a coach, you know, it's hard getting young African men to come out and work in their community, trying to give back. And some of these young men have worked faithfully, comes out there after work, just wanted to try to give back to their community. And I feel like, we got to be able to see what's good, that we're working our butt off to try to help these young men and young ladies to become good citizens one day. But it hurt me that today, when I spoke with the director, she told me she didn't see anything wrong. But if you don't see anything wrong, we got one game left, and that's tomorrow night. This is a young man that, that he's a hard-working coach. He works hard, but at the end of the day, I feel like he was targeted. I feel like I was targeted for the past 8 months. I was being targeted. But at the end of the day, I can't blame the young man and myself. But all I'm asking y'all to do is please, once you read this and see what's going on, and we really need to look into this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you for your many years of service and coaching.
Yep, Hoagland.
Good evening. I'd like to give you
Okay.
I made a copy for every one of the council members.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Skip Hoagland. For years, I've been fighting a very public battle with destination marketing organizations called city DMOs, including Charleston. The basis for my fight has been transparency. I hope you agree that DMOs publicly funded by accommodation taxes should be transparent about how they spend the millions of dollars they receive each year from local governments such as yourself. I can't imagine that any elected official would disagree with that premise, and I hope you don't. Problem is, Helen Hill and lawyer David Jennings fight hard to avoid financial records disclosure. With lame, fraudulent excuses that the Charleston CVB is fully transparent to the city and even its members. This is a lie. It's time for the charade to end. And here's why. I won a landmark case against the Hilton Head Chamber CVB, which serves as a DMO for Hilton Head. The judge made it crystal clear, because the CVB Chamber receives public funding, it's a public body under FOIA and must comply and open its books. The CVB Chamber refused the court ruling and appealed the case to the Supreme Court, which I attended a couple of days ago. Helen Hill and David Jennings actually agreed to comply to FOIA if I sent them $2,500. When I asked for more documentation, they refused and sent my check back. I hope it's obvious to you there can only be one logical reason for refusal to be transparent. Ms. Hill has something to hide. All taxpayers have a right to know how Helen Hill spends every dollar, perhaps over the years exceeding $100 million, with zero oversight by this council or anybody in this city. This council must follow the Reagan principle, trust but verified, with a forensic audit to know what Ms. Hill has been hiding. It's your fiduciary responsibility in the public interest you serve. To end today, this council is in violation of procurement laws. You have no signed DMO contract. You're allowing unconstitutional misuse of tax funds, violating IRS UBIT laws. And you're allowing unfair competition to the tax-paying companies and local medias in this city by Helen Hill. I just handed you the Palm Beach CVB audit that resulted in prison for $1.6 million in embezzlement. Also articles on the FBI raid on the Berkeley County, South Carolina DMO, and the school CFO found guilty of $400,000 in theft. Helen Hill, Jim Merrill laundering scheme. Mayor, council, Helen Hill is running a for-profit IRS tax scam, not for the public good and the use and the benefit, disguised as a nonprofit 501-C6 CVB. You must fix this, or you could all be held liable.
Time.
Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your attention, and I hope you fix and listen to what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so next we'll have Reverend Charles Hayward, followed by Reverend Danny Reed, and then Edward Jones.
Charles Hayward, James Island, Councilwoman's Kath, Glenn Wilson District. Just want to stand before you momentarily to remind you of, maybe keep before us the police audit. When we last met, we were really looking forward to the Public Safety Committee meeting, and we wanted that to take place before this meeting so that you and KJM and the community will be clear about where we are. That meeting has not taken place yet. We're looking forward to being at the table when it does take place, to continue to participate in the discussion and a clearer understanding of the worker scope that is supposed to be done in the police audit. We know that we are still not yet clear. Councilmen, councilwomen, the two organizations and questions that we are conversating still do not yet have a clear scope on the costs of the audit, because there's still work on being clear about the scope of the audit. And so we want to encourage this council, you, Mr. Mayor, to be diligent, to be ever so determined that the fiscal resources, as just mentioned, even by our previous spokesperson, that that this effort gets underway. It gets done with a qualified firm doing the audit, and certainly it's the fiscal responsibility in paying for it is also managed in terms of protecting the taxpayers' money. We're looking forward to the continuing process of this request.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you. My name is Danny Reed, and I'm the minister of the Unitarian Church in Mr. Seeking's district. I appreciate the time before you tonight. I'm also an active member of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, and those of us in leadership roles are obligated to due diligence to our member congregations, and it is in that spirit that I come before you tonight. A few weeks ago, KJM met with NOVAC and RTI and have since given them and this council a scope of work. We are meeting with NOVAC next week to further discuss the scope of work, but this process has been entirely backward. Never before has this council hired someone without first giving them a clear scope of work of what they'll be asked to do. And never before has a contractor been hired to do a job they've never done before. We must continue to ask why corners are being cut to address racial bias. Novak and RTI have never done an in-depth audit for racial bias, never looked beyond data and gave recommendations for improvements. Additional consultants who are police auditing experts are still needed to give this project credibility. There is still time to get this right. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones?
Okay, Edward Jones, followed by Joan Hazelton, I think this is.
Good evening. My name is Edward Jones, founder of the Concerned Citizen of the Peninsula/Low Country. Resident.
The mic, Ed.
I don't want to pay now. Well, anyhow, Mayor Tecklenburg and council members, I was saying this for the past 15 years. That, see, y'all got to realize when it comes on us, it's more than just coaching, all right? We become to be these young men and young ladies' father. No. We become to be people that they can lean and depend on because they have nobody else to go and talk to. Just Sunday, last week Saturday, we buried a 17-year-old. Sunday, right off the project, went to North Charleston looking for something to do. Another 17-year-old gets shot. Laying up in MUFC, don't know if this kid's gonna make it or not. That hurt me. That hurt Coach Larry Boy. 35 years with him, 40-some-odd years with us. We done pay our debt to the city. So why we constantly have to keep going through the same thing, I don't know. And probably ain't for us to know. But it's up to you all who we elected as our voice. We elected the mayor and 12 council members sitting in here to be our voice. This is our city. We choose y'all to be the people, to be the men and women to speak up for us. So we shouldn't have to be running down here constantly every meeting or every other meeting saying the same thing. I was saying, if you go back and check the record, I was saying it for the past 15 years. And nobody paid no attention. And so now, here come Coach Matthews, they come up with the same exact thing. These are our kids, this is our community, all right? Re-election coming up again, some of you run for re-election, and the next 2 years somebody could be running for re-election again. I'm asking y'all as elected official, as public servants, to step forth and do what we ask y'all to do. If not, just pack up and start leaving. I'm sick and tired of it. I born and raised in the city of Charleston. Ain't nobody bring me here. And I'm tired of being hurt and tired of going to funeral and burying our young people. I'm sick and tired of it. Calling council much you 2 and 3 o'clock in the nighttime because another child going through stuff. When these people leave at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening time, they're gone, all right? We got to deal with this. We got to pick up kids from Westchester or downtown or back to Green or anyway and take them someplace to try to fill in with the parent and there for them at. This is serious. This is serious business. I'm going to support Coach Larry Boy with every effort he do. Something need to be done and need to be done today.
Joan Hazelton.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Joan Hazelton, and I live at 3 Limehouse Street. And I'm here to ask the council members to defer a vote on number 4 for the K bills under the second reading. This is addressing the residential parking for 2 reasons. One, I believe the ordinance is confusing and contradictory and has unintended consequences that are very negative for residents and taxpayers. And more importantly, this amended ordinance was not attached to the agenda It was not on the city website this afternoon, and there was lack of proper public notice, so I would ask that you defer this vote this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've talked to legal about this. It's true that the paper item was not on the agenda. It was inadvertently left out of the agenda, but everything was advertised and the line item indicated that it was going to be amended. It was amended on the floor of council. You guys amended it last meeting. So that's the true story. It was not, the paper document was not on the agenda. The line item was on the agenda. And all of the requirements were met. Yes, she's talking about K3.
K3 rather than K4.
Talking about K3.
Okay.
K3 and K4 are the ones that she was interested in. She's speaking on K3. That's it, she's last.
Thank you very much. So next, we'll go to our committee reports. License Committee is first. Chairman Gregory.
Move for approval.
Sign up on the participation period, but I was going to take someone else's time. That's okay.
Oh, we don't transfer time anymore, but we will allow you to come forward and address the council. Please come forward.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
Thank you. My name's Lindsay Hamrick, and I live on James Island. Just wanted to bring something up that is coming up in the paper tomorrow that I'm really concerned about, and a lot of James Islanders are concerned about. And I drafted some notes to Ms. Maybank, so hopefully I won't run over. But I want to address the recent accusation that Save James Island is a special interest group. I'm a member of that group. A couple of elected officials tomorrow are quoted as saying something like James Island residents who don't live in the city shouldn't try to influence city elections. Not only do I think that's unfair, but frankly, it's offensive. Save James Island is made up of a large group of us who are concerned about the quality of life and livability on James Island, period. I mean, if that's a special interest, then I would hope that it would be one that the mayor and the city share. It is this concerned group who brought you the 1,200 signature petition for an apartment moratorium, one that I'm happy you extended tonight, since we're still dealing with adopting the Folly Road overlay. To say that only city residents have a right to voice concerns on city issues is ridiculous. The decisions made by this body impact the lives of all James Islanders, not just those in the city. When I bought my home 7 years ago, I had no idea that the color of my garbage can would determine where my voice could be heard. 2/3 of James Island population and land is in the city. I'm a realtor. I have clients all over James Island, the city, and the county. My clients share a lot of the same concerns that we at St. James Island have. We want to be able to safely cross Maybank Highway to the farmer's market, but the inadequate crosswalk and traffic signal are owned by the city. I don't want 150 apartments built on Central Road at an intersection that I use daily. I want a cohesive, coordinating planning effort for James Island involving all 4 municipalities on the island. Am I not allowed to ask for the city for those things just because I live in the town? I would expect that the elected officials of any local body or municipality would be sensitive to the needs of all of us who call Charleston home, not just the special interests of city residents alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now to the committee report for License Committee. Chairman Gregory.
Well,
Second.
well, Mayor, are you skipping petitions and communications?
I did skip the petitions and communications. Sorry about that, I didn't mean to. Y'all want to finish this one committee report and then we'll go back?
Yeah, we go back.
Okay. So we already have a motion to accept the report.
Right.
Is there any further discussion or report, Mr. Chairman? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, the ayes have it. Now we'll go back to petitions and communications. Thank you very much. The first is a request by Councilmember Gregory and Wilson to have a discussion regarding a $100 million drainage funding strategy. Councilmember Gregory or Wilson, who would like to lead?
I'll start, and I know it looks as though it's the Wilson-Gregory hour under petitions and communications, but we probably won't take that long. I heard that. This is exactly a strategy that we would like to inform our fellow council members about and the mayor. We know that raising $100 million would require us to identify the revenue in order to support $100 million. And Kathleen and I, and some advice from other colleagues, have come up with a proposal whereby we think, through bold leadership, we can achieve this. In order to support $100 million, we have to identify about $8.1 million in revenue in order to support it. The question is, where do you get that revenue? We have some suggestions for this council at some point to consider. This is just a strategy. We know that we currently have about 4 mil of bonding capacity in our stormwater drainage revenue. And with 4 mil, if we were to implement it, we're already at 4.1 mil toward the revenue needed in order to support the 100 million. We also know that we have approximately around $32 million in our stormwater funds, in addition to what we may have set aside in A tax and H tax. So in order for us to achieve the 8.1 million revenue, we think that we should start talking about the increase in millage currently by 4 mils. We should increase the stormwater fee, which has not been increased in 11 years. We also think that we should approach the state to increase the A tax by 1%, the H tax by 1%, and of course something that we all have been talking about, well, not we all, but I've been talking about, and that's but placing a head tax, our head fee, on all cruise ship passengers. While we know that that fee is not bondable because the cruise ship industry can leave at any time. But in the interim, with about 200 and something thousand passengers annually, it could at least afford us about $2 million that we could use for infrastructure. We also think that we should focus on our TIF districts and assure that our TIF districts also use funds for drainage, similar to what we're attempting to do with the Hugie Street, King Street drainage problems. Now, we're not talking about, and I think it was Council Member Williams wanted to know whether or not we were talking about funding any specific projects at this time. We're not. We're just trying to come up with a strategy whereby we can address some of the flooding problems that have plagued many of our communities. And some of those problems are just simply taking care of the ditches. There is no excuse for anybody's home to be flooded because the ditches aren't maintained. There's not repairs done to the ditches, and in some cases we need to increase the size of the piping to make sure that we have the proper downflow. Those kinds of projects will not cost us the hundreds of millions of dollars that many of the projects on the peninsula will cost us. Those are things that we hope, if we move forward with this strategy, that we'd be able to deal with some of the problems on Johns Island, West Ashley, and of course James Island, which are just simply fixes to the ditches. We also think that it's possible that this would go pretty far to helping with the seawall that we need on the battery. We know also that staff is involved in trying to get grants from federal agencies. In fact, we just heard of one recently from FEMA, which is going to assist us. But there are a number of other federal grants, and of course, our public service director is aware of them, and I'm not going to go through that list, that would help us along. But we're talking about trying to identify revenues so that we can establish a revenue bond to raise as much as $100 million to be available for drainage in the city. We also know that some of what we're talking about is pretty obvious. In fact, the mayor and I have talked about the 4 mil. And the fact that that does exist. But I do think that if we're very serious about the flooding in our city, about seawall rise, as a legislative body, I think we have to start thinking outside the box and stop talking about things and to start some movement in a direction so that we can in fact have the revenue stream necessary to eradicate some of the problems that we have for flooding. I'm not attempting to oversimplify it at all because it is going to take some movement and some bold movement from this body to make it happen. But I do think it's something that we need to consider strongly. There are other revenue sources from the state. We've got the SIB. We've got the $600 million that's going to come in from the half-cent sales tax. So there are a number of resources, potential sources, where we may be able to get dollars, but we need to get at least $8 million in revenue in order for us to be able to do a $100 million bond. It's open for discussion, folks. I may not be able to answer all the questions, but we have not had a rate increase in 11 years with regard to our water and sewer. So I also think that that's potentially a rich place for us to be able to get additional revenue in order to support a $100 million bond referendum. Discussions?
Councilmember Wilson?
This is a first cut. Somebody has to stand up and at least give the first draft of, and quantify some of these sources that we've talked about. And there's been a lot of talk over the years, regardless of what you think about cruise ships and those related matters. We have talked from time to time about a head tax. And it's not one of those things that's instituted without a firm pot of money in which to fund. This may be the perfect allocation for something like that. But again, these ideas warrant a little fleshing out and a wholehearted discussion.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Moody.
Now, I was just going to talk about a couple of the issues you mentioned. Number one, I guess it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, that we increased the stormwater millage by 2 mills. We went from 2 to 4. One of the things that I've noticed over the years that this city does, and that we don't get credit for it, but we do it, and that's the lost money, the local option sales tax. And what we do that none of the other cities around here that we do know that they don't do it the same way. State law requires that 60% of that money go to reduce property taxes. The other 40% can go into general revenue of your general fund. The city of Charleston has always taken 100% of that local option sales tax and put it into tax reduction. So when we raised the mills by 2 mills, and a mill is about $1 million that it brings in, as you know, when we did that, that 2 mill tax increase within 2 years was eliminated by the increase of the local option sales tax. So my point is that we could raise that thing 2 or 4 mills, and with the growth of our city and sales tax, the taxpayers are really getting a break. And so it makes us go to the taxpayers and explain what we're doing with their money. But that's one thing. The other thing is this, you mentioned 11 years on the stormwater, the usage fee. And what that does is that makes all of our not-for-profits that are in this city bear some of that cost. Medical University, Roper, College, Citadel, all of those not-for-profits that are out there using our facilities, and some of them are raising a lot of cane about they can't get to work, that's something that they pay. And so they don't pay property taxes, but they do pay that. So again, those folks have a break over here, so it may be time for them to step up a little bit. So I encourage you to look at that local option sales tax, maybe try to push that a little bit to look at what that relationship is, and also that 11-year hiatus on not raising that, I think, is a good source. And we could get there fairly quickly, because we do have, I don't think there's any district in the 12 around this table, and since they all belong to the mayor, they're always, they're all his problem. But I mean, I could start down in District 11 and start telling you William Ackerman Boulevard and just telling you the streets that are flooding at a high tide. And so you're exactly right. You didn't go completely where I would have gone. There's no reason in this city for a house to be flooded because the pipe is undersized or the ditch is not maintained. It's both. And so that's where this money needs to go. And if we're serious about drainage, we'll do something about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I thank council members, Gregory and Wilson, for bringing this up. But obviously, we're all in this together, and we've had some discussions, Mr. Mayor, on this. And you and we and all of us will need help with this. Because, number one, to identify the debt service on that, I think, is about $5.7 million. The 8.1 is the 30 to 40% overage, okay, on drainage bonds. The coverage ratio. It's not going to be that hard to, I think, with all of us pushing in the right direction, obviously with your leadership, Mr. Mayor, to get a comprehensive drainage solution, get a comprehensive drainage solution to accumulate the payment on $100 million worth of bond. And that's if you use the numbers based on a 4% interest on a 30-year bond. So for Ms. Wharton over there, I think that would be the numbers that hypothetically, and right now, we may be able to get less than 30%. We're going to need some help, as we discussed, Mr. Mayor, with from our state delegation, our members of the House and General Assembly, because if there is going to be an increase in the hospitality aid tax, that's got to come through the state. If we're going to get, what was it, $10 per head? Yeah. Increase on the tour people, as you and I discussed, there's going to be pushback on that. So this is something we're going to have to be united. But when it comes to getting monies from Washington or everybody else, if the question were asked, have we put forth our best efforts? We have not had that comprehensive discussion that we've talked about with our pools. We haven't had that comprehensive discussion that would bring the best practices and out-of-box ideas For example, the lost revenue that you spoke about, I think Amy says like 90-something% that we actually use. It's not quite 100%, but still, no other municipality in this region uses as much money as we do to reduce property taxes. But 3 major flooding events in 3 years, and actually we need to add another one. There was about a 5.5-inch rain that we got in 2015 before the 1,000-year rain event that put people out of their homes. It was just, we got like 5.5 inches in like 2 or 3 hours on a high tide. So it's really been 4 flooding events in 4 years that put people out of their homes in some cases. And to keep doing it the same way, we know the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result is insanity. It's insane. So if the litmus test is, what did you do to pull yourself by your own bootstraps? The lost revenue is one. An additional one is, and I know we like the additional green space and all by the battery, and again, this is a joint discussion with 13 people in here. The green space at the battery, if we were to meter the parking down there, we may be able to generate, I don't know, $500,000 a year that could go towards bonding and funding to help raise the wall down there. Green space, maybe we can get that later on, but obviously expediting raising the wall certainly makes sense. I think out of every 1 million or so, based on that calculation, you raise about, in cash flow, you raise about maybe 15 million in bonding capacity. It gets us to where we need to be sooner. Hopefully we have 13 people pushing in the same direction. There may be some other rocks out there, but we all need to put our hard hats on because a lot of people are going to push back. State Ports Authority, I don't know, the CVB, the people who go and fish for free and park for free at the battery will push back. But if we don't do anything different, we won't generate any additional revenues. And the problem that we have right now is larger than our stormwater budget. To be able to clean every ditch in this city once every year, it's going to take additional manpower. But years ago, this city used to have a problem with potholes. And it got to be such a problem, it came to city council. We don't have that problem anymore because 1-800 potholes, and pretty much within 48 hours, I mean, I know there are exceptions, but pretty much that's taken care of. But Councilmember Moody is right. It should never be a person that's flooded out of their home because the ditch wasn't clean, a pipe was too small, or drainage needed to be vacuumed out. Those things we can do something about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis.
Mr. Mayor, I sure thank Councilmember Gregory and Councilmember Wilson for their bright insight because we do need to do something about the flooding. I'm glad to hear him say that we hadn't raised a fee on stormwater in 11 years, because I sat here 11 years before we raised it the first time, and the reason we raised it that time, because we was in a meeting on Daniel Island, and Mayor Raleigh had to leave because something, I think his mother-in-law was sick, so we decided we was going to do it that night. And now 11 years later, we're talking about raising the fee again, so there's something about that 11-11. But he is correct. We need to do more to clean these ditches. I get calls all the time from West Ashley, but ditches need to be cleaned. There's a lot of preventive maintenance on these pipes, some of these pipes throughout the city need to be cleaned. Like I said earlier, Laura just don't have the staff to do it. So I think if we could raise the stormwater fee and do some other things, I think that we could show the people in this city that we are serious about being the city council that they want and what they want. They want basic service taken care of, and this is one of the basic service needs that they want to see done, and that's to prevent the flooding as much as we possibly can in the city. So I thank y'all for that great idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Shade.
So I think the question is, where do we go from here? I mean, I think that we're stating the obvious,
that everybody who represents any portion of the city has a constituent or a neighborhood that complains about this. And I'm not sure where $100 million comes out of or how that number just sort of pops up. But it seems that there are two things that I heard tonight that we need to be addressing. One is looking at revenue on their alternate means of raising revenue or increasing revenue or tapping into different revenue that we haven't tapped into before. And the second thing is doing something along the lines of a comprehensive review or study as to our policy on open ditches. In my neighborhood of North Bridge, you don't have to go too far around to see the overgrown areas, and I'm dealing with a particular constituent has a shed built over his neighbor's ditch that causes problems with flooding. So maybe part of this discussion should be along the lines of, let's start exploring funding options in increasing fees or increasing millages or tapping into things we haven't tapped into before if that's available. Two, maybe looking at our policy on open ditches and whether or not we need to be thinking about piping in these older subdivisions and the cost of doing that, but how much that may play out in saving us time and money and expense of not having to reinvest resources on maintenance of that. So I think we've got to keep the ball moving on this. This is a great discussion, a great opening part of what we're dealing with tonight. But in order to get it going, let's keep those ideas in mind and let's move down the road a little bit further.
So,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Gregory.
because I think that we're all sort of thinking and being creative here, and I think that that's what we're going to have to do. But I think Kathleen and I will make sure that this is just not a discussion. As time moves forward, we will be making formal recommendations to this body to take action, because we talk about a lot of stuff and then we just let it die on the vine. And Mayor, I know you've been taking notes up there, and some of what we've talked about, I'm sure you're aware of, been aware of. However, at this point, we want to try and move things a little further on, because it is about the water in this city. And as I had mentioned to you, it's always been my campaign's mantra, it's the water, stupid. And we've got to get on it as quickly as possible.
Councilmember Seeking.
Thank you. Just really briefly, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council members, for bringing this up. It'll be a conversation we should be having every time we meet. I agree, water is a big deal. A couple things we are doing that I think is just probably a good idea to keep in mind. In order to get to a place where, I mean, $100 million is a start. If you believe what Mark Wilbert has told us, it's $2 billion.
Correct.
Could be more. It's a lot of money to protect our city tomorrow, the next day, and 50 years down the road. And we need resources, not just in terms of money, but people seeking out those resources. In our budget next year, we have in there a full-time grant writer, something that we're going to need. We're going to need help from all over the place. A full-time grant writer can certainly be looking at that. We do not currently have on staff a full-time 24-hour, 24/7.
That's proposed for next year's budget.
Resiliency officer. That's coming next year. So we will have some of those people in place to be doing what you bring up tonight and thinking about it all the time so it doesn't end up on the shelf. And speaking of ending up on the shelf, I just couldn't resist because you brought it up. We have in fact thought about head taxing people off the cruise ships. Not only we thought about it, we've adopted it as a policy of this council, 13-0 in the tourism management plan. So while it needs to be talked about, there's a source of revenue that this council has endorsed, 13-0. There are plenty of others out there. We should leave no stone unturned, not picking any one industry, but that's one that's getting a free pass. I mean, a free pass. So congratulations on bringing it up. We're all going to be working on this. There's a lot of work to do. And, like I said, $100 million is just a starting point. We're talking in the B levels. So let's get behind the budget and let's put people in place to implement the policies that you've just talked about. Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you. But some of these action steps is going to involve our our delegation. So they can actually get bills in committee for the January session. So that's why good discussion is going to have to turn into action steps relatively soon because it's already October, end of October. So anyway, we need to do more than have a good touchy-feely conversation tonight. We need action steps, in particular with our delegation, because if we voted 13-0, and you're right on that, we certainly didn't follow up with the delegation because it didn't make it into Columbia in the form of a vote.
So if I may, for just a minute, share a few things. Thank you, by the way, Council Members Gregory and Wilson, for bringing up this matter. It's certainly something that affects every district and every part of the city, something that we all agree on, that needs intense efforts, and that we have to look under every rock that we can find for funding for solutions. So, but I do want to point out a couple things. One of which is city staff has been working on this matter diligently this year. As some of you may recall, that came to our workshop meeting in July, which was before the storm season this year. We had a 3-hour presentation that Mark Wilbert had put together after a meeting with all our department heads about taking our sea level rise strategies, which deals mostly with drainage and flooding, and prioritizing the things that we need to do moving forward. That's what I'm interested in, Councilmember Shade and all of you. And I also want to just point out, and I appreciate, again, you bringing this to a discussion this evening, but this is part of what the city has been working on, trying to do for some years before I even came along. And a great example is the project on the Septima Clark Parkway, or the drainage tunnel up there. It's about a $170 million project, which included funding from federal funds through Tiger, because that was involved with the roadway, from state infrastructure bank board funds, from TIF district funds from our Gateway TIF district, from drainage, the millage, and from our stormwater fee. So that one project included funding sources from at least 5 of these different topics that you mentioned this evening. So, and a lot of this is project driven. I mean, you can't apply for the TIF funding until you got a project in hand. You got to be able to show whoever you're applying the grant for that you've got a specific shovel-ready project before they're ready to put funds into it. So we have to prioritize the remaining projects that were left from the stormwater study from years ago. We have some new projects that we already know that we're going to need to add. That includes the Church Creek drainage recommendations that we expect October 3rd, just week after next. And then we also need to account, as you've all mentioned, or many of you have mentioned, the maintenance aspect. So even if we get a $8 million annual income stream that's dedicated to drainage and flooding, we got to dedicate a certain portion of that to the guys that go out and clean the ditches and do all like that. So week before last, I was with those guys, and if you look down, Councilmember Regal, along Bees Ferry, right between going right from the Glen McConnell on the other side of the street, 4 guys were in there. I went down and spent a little time with them. They had chainsaws. They completely cleared out that ditch. It was amazing difference that they did, and we need to do more of it. But I'm just saying we have to, allocate a certain amount of the budget to maintenance. So where those funds come from, as I mentioned, we've used TIF funds before. We've used the Gateway funds for part of the Septima Clark project. Part of the Calhoun West Basin also hits the Gateway TIF district, Councilmember Seekings, so we can use some future funds, and that TIF district is like the district that keeps on giving. So we can pull some funds from that TIF district. The drainage bond millage you've mentioned, It's at 4 mills now. I think a portion of that millage was allocated to the prior bond from about 4 or 5 years ago. And City Council will have to consider between now and the time our budget is approved whether we want to increase that millage. I think increasing the stormwater fee by at least what is allowable by law is a no-brainer. The Cooper River TIF district funds, we talked about at our last budget meeting just last week and have already allocated $3 million that we would put to drainage from that. The future West Edge and West Ashley TIF districts could support drainage projects in the future. Part of the West Ashley TIF district encompasses the doo-wop area that the city and county is currently studying as to specific projects that are to come. Hospitality funds we have in fact already been using, and that's where we've been allocating $5 million a year to the low battery seawall project that we look to start in the next year. The general fund, for capital projects, we use reserve funds every year to go to capital projects. I mean, we got to set some priorities as to which capital projects you want to assign or include some drainage there. I don't know if y'all know this, but business license fees, we move $500,000 every year from business license fees to our drainage fund. I think the loss, the local option sales tax, is a great idea, something we need to look at, and parking revenue, we're always trying to beef that up. Now, the matters that involve state approval, like 1% additional for accommodations tax or the head tax, we're going to need support, as you mentioned, from our legislators, and I would welcome y'all's assistance in dealing with them. So here's kind of where I see it. Between now and the end of the year, we've got a budget to approve. We've got the the Church Creek drainage recommendations coming to us October 30th, and they'll have some specific projects. We know we need to address some projects in the Church Creek Basin. If you take that together with a prioritization of those stormwater projects that never got done, from the study that was done 30 years ago, we ought to come up with what I would call the top 10 list of projects that we identify by the end of the year. And that's going to force us into that equation of the millage and the stormwater fee and what it's going to require of our citizens, really, to kind of balance the books to make the most important projects go forward. Whether that's 70 million or 100 million, I don't know, but we'll be figuring that out over the next couple of months. And I thank you again, because you're right, we're all in this together and got to work on this collaboratively. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
And I thank you for all of that. The information from the TIF districts and all that, always that didn't mean to take away from that. In other words, this would be accretive towards that. But when we go back to the 1984 study or whatever, 1984, 86, whatever, it was approximately 40 years ago, or less than 40 years, there was never, as I see it, a funding mechanism just to take care of ditches, increasing the pipes, and making sure scoping the pipes, making sure that these drains in and around the peninsula and elsewhere are sucked out on a regular schedule, because we just didn't have the money to dedicate it to hire the manpower to do it. That's the change. We don't want to take anything away from the TIFs. Obviously, the hospitality money that we've been socking away $5 million on, we agree with that. We may need to do more, quite frankly.
That's right.
But houses are flooding, neighborhoods are flooding because ditches in some cases aren't clean and aren't large enough, and the pipes are too small. We spoke last meeting about King and Hughie quite a bit with the low line and the combination. We all went out of here very happy from that unanimous vote. And I wouldn't say we were high-fiving, but we all felt pretty good about it. That potential drainage solution has been there, the answer, since Davis and Floyd did that 1984 study. Ms. Cabinets told me in the study, It required, I think right now we have a 24 or maybe a 36-inch pipe. That study had called for 2 culverts, 4 feet tall, 6 feet wide, so 4 by 12, getting waters out of there. From 1984 to now, until the low line came along and a comprehensive discussion took place, that didn't happen. Now, obviously the city could have paid for that, all right? We've been in a position, special projects, we've done them great. But when it comes to that everyday meat and potato things, like a pothole, we can get there on ditches, increasing the pipes. That's the cheapest way to solve a flooding problem. A ditch, gravity flow, and the proper size pipes. We've got that all over the city, and we certainly got it all west of the peninsula. Not so much on Daniel Island because it's new. The right culverts and stuff are in. But the special funding, the Tiger grants, I agree with all of that. You know, it was a great out-of-the-box thinking for the crosstown. But your idea about going to the infrastructure bank that we just spoke about potentially for monies to help with the wall, again, is one of those out-of-the-box ideas that I think we all have to push in the right direction. So just in this discussion tonight, we probably came up with 3 or 4 additional ways that we have not been pursuing. We have not pursued the lost revenue as a potential solution. We have not pursued metering the battery. We have not pursued, obviously, what you may mention, potentially going to the infrastructure bank for the wall at the battery. So I certainly hope this can convert to action steps, and obviously include now local delegations so we can get something in front and start that tug-of-war conversation with Columbia to help out with some of this.
All right. Thank you. Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One quick comment, and I know you all have all seen it. As you drive around downtown or you drive down Savannah Highway, we see these landscapers blowing the leaves out into the street. And it's like magic, they're going to disappear somewhere. Well, they disappear right down the drain. And I don't know why they think that's solving their problem rather than bagging them, but basically it creates problems with our drainage system. And I mean, you see them doing it all the time. I don't know how we stop that, but it seems to me like that ought to be an issue up there somewhere. You don't have to spend any money to tell them to quit.
That's why we have code enforcement officers a lot of time. That's why I always ask that question. They need to be out here more doing their job. If they do their job, start finding some of these people, we won't have that problem. Every other meeting for the last 2 years, we put on different code enforcement officers, but that's one of the things that they need to enforce. So we got a lot to look at.
Yeah.
That could solve a lot of that problem.
Mayor, and I just have to say this. Our recommendations were not set forward to make light of what's already going on. That's of what's going on at all. Because most of what you alluded to, most of the folks on this council voted for. So we're quite aware of it. But I think it's important for us to just try to identify additional ways to get to where we need to be. It is not going to require a priority listing for me to determine that the ditch needs cleaning and maintaining. I don't need that on a list. There's some things that are just very obvious. And so when Kathleen and I have been having our discussions, you know, we're trying to get at those things that are obvious, that will not take a multi-$100,000 study to do. Commonsensical approaches to the problems that we face on James Island. So I don't want you to think that we are making light at all of what staff has already been doing. We know that. We've been a part of it, okay? So I don't want you at all, okay, to feel that that's what we were attempting to do. We're just trying to put something at the forefront that our constituents are telling us is needed.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, number 2 is the discussion on the 1 acre parcel remaining in the gathering place. Councilmember Wilson and Gregory again.
I'll take this one for you.
Yes.
Thank you. At any rate, we all remember the great gathering place debate. And it came to no good end in spite of best efforts. However, there is one parcel that remains that is undeveloped. It's right in the front, in front of the standard. And some days there are rumors that the property owner, Mr. Luzuriaga, has it under contract, and other days not. What I would ask of my colleagues here is we now have additional half-cent greenbelt monies. And those monies are not apparently to be bonded the way the first round was, but spent on an accrual basis. And I would like to talk with Colleen Carducci, and I would like to talk with Mike Schwartz from the Standard, and potentially even the town of James Island, and of course the city, and see if perhaps we can put together something to purchase that 1 acre. I believe the asking price, at least right now, it's a little under an acre. It's about 0.9 of an acre, is around $1 million. And I think that would add something to going down Maybank, because it's going to be devastating when Corps begins clearing that land for the second apartment complex, especially with all of the surface parking that's going in there. Again, not a good end. However, preserving that 1 acre, I think, would do a lot to break up the monotony, to break up the buildings, and would certainly preserve that remaining 1 acre. So I would ask your support as a council in moving forward with these various conversations, and when I come back to you, I hope to come back to you with Councilmember Gregory with something more tangible, and perhaps seeing where we can cobble together this mean. It's just like with the drainage issue. It needs to be cobbled together from various sources. But I think it would be something that would be beneficial to the island after everything that has gone on with that particular tract of land. Dovetailing into item number 3, which...
Let me,
yes,
before you
please
move
do. I'm
on,
sorry.
yeah. Because we've had the discussion, Mayor, on that piece of land too. And more than one of my neighborhood associations, Cross Creek and Lakeside, over a year and a half ago, wanted us to move forward with trying to get the city on an intergovernmental effort to acquire the land, because the Standard and of course the core that's being built has some issues with respect to impervious surfaces, to say the least. And I think that this tract of land would help us in that regard. In addition, really giving some nice public space to soften and balance that area. The last thing we need is a restaurant there, Mayor. And if we don't move fairly quickly, okay, those are the kinds of things that it's zoned for. So this is not one that we want to just sit. We do need to move forward to try to see whether or not acquisition, multi-county, multi-jurisdiction, however, so that we can get that land, because it really definitely would soften things. We're talking about, on that area, we're probably talking about ultimately 700 or more units, apartment units. We've got to create a buffer there.
Councilmember Moody?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but under this Greenbelt money that we've got now, it was allocated 30% urban, 70% exterior or outside.
That was the first half cent.
Yeah, and that y'all are trying to flip that.
Our recommendation.
Right, but several mayors are trying to move that to say, okay, so this might be a way that we can help some of this to create more money that would be available for these kind of things. So I know you're pushing that, and I know there's 4 or 5 other mayors, and I don't know who they are, that are pushing it also. So maybe I would encourage you to keep pushing.
So I can give you all a brief update. Jason Kronsberg, by the way, is representing the city. I've asked him to represent us on the Greenbelt Advisory Board. They've had a couple of meetings. The new half cent, well, as Councilmember Moody mentioned, the first half cent had 70% rural and 30% urban, and we've requested, just in our meeting with their consultant and their director, that they flip that. They had a meeting the other day. The consultant and the staff recommended to the board that it be a 50-50 split. They didn't take a vote on it yet. They'll meet again in November, and hopefully that matter will be resolved, and also whether they will bond any of it or not. So those decisions haven't been finalized, so we don't know yet what our income stream is going to be, but I'm looking forward to them resolving it. I think the rural areas had their turn. They had their 70%, and I think I made a pretty good case to the folks that the urban areas need more, and we need to be able to be flexible to spend it on existing property and park space that we own that hadn't been developed yet. And the idea that they would continue to buy conservation rights on basically private property without the public having use of the property, I think is just wrong. And so hopefully going forward, we'll get a little better income stream, but it may not be all at once. It may be over time. And so we just have to see what the advisory board comes in. And then we can, look at Gathering Place property. I think it's $1.25 million, 1.25 million is the asking price for the property. And then the property also you mentioned it's on Harbor View Road, right?
That has a little, and that's why I bring these up, knowing that these discussions are going on with the mayors and with the allocation of money. That's why I felt that it was the time to bring these up. This property along the James Island connector has been a little more internal towards James Island. However, it's a parcel. If you come off the connector on Harbor View, you get on Harbor View as though you're going down towards the cemetery. Look off to the right. There's an access road, and there's a parcel on the corner. There's a pink food staffing house, and then there's a rectangular lot. That's the lot that I'm referring to. It's been on the market before, and actually the town of James Island did an appraisal for it. The landowner was not willing to sell for the appraised value. She felt it was worth more. But in looking at that line, or looking at that property and looking how critical line has changed over the years, that property is rapidly, if not becoming completely undevelopable. It would be a real shame to try and cram houses on there, as it is zoned for single-family residential, because they would all have to be up substantially high, and it would be unsightly. But this is, again, it's a really nice, it's an entryway to James Island, coming off the connector, and would be a suitable purchase through Greenbelt funds, and a good addition to these small parks that we have, and preserve that land. Charleston Water System is going to be purchasing, or they've already purchased many of the houses in Harborview Circle. That will become the expansion for that facility with offices and the like. They were very, very supportive about coming on board as a potential partner with the purchase of the land and contributing a sizable sum to that purchase. So that is something that's kind of an ace that we're holding right there. So the city, it would not be incumbent upon one body or another for the full purchase price. So I need to bring these things up while the discussions are ongoing with the mayors, and let you all know that we hope that details will be forthcoming and may be coming to you for an ask.
Right. And Councilmember Wilson's correct. I think the city took a look at one of these properties before and had an appraisal done on the property, and the property owner wanted something like 3 times what the appraised value was. And so, at some point, you can't.
The property is once again for sale with a new listing agent, and I don't know whether the property owner has softened her stance or not.
Well,
It merits follow-up and asking.
thank you very much. Okay, if there's no further discussion on those items, we'll move on now to the Committee on Recreation. Back to Chairman Gregory. A1. Oh, let's talk about it some more. Come on. So I don't guess any action needs to be taken on that. Committee on Public Works and Utilities,
Approve unanimous, and I so move.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Committee on Ways and Means,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our bills up for second reading. We have, I think, 4 bills up. Okay, 1 and 2, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now for third reading and ratification.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is item number K3. This was a parking matter, loading zone, breaking the meters, and residential parking districts. We have a motion and a second. We have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And number 4 was to clarify a restriction of parking in certain streets.
I don't think that's his waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry, third reading and ratification of number 3. We got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now we can go to number 4. We got a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is L, they kind of go together, L1 and 2, bills up for first reading. This might look a little ominous, but it's just to put into place what council approved about a year ago when we approved for accommodations use right in the midst of the Septima Clark Parkway where the old Wendy's is, and the owner allowed a right-of-way to be given to the city for a future alignment with Haygood Avenue to cross the crosstown. So that's what 1 and 2 are about.
Move for approval.
Second.
We got a motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That's on numbers 1 and 2 together, and 3 and 4 deferred. So let me just finish signing up these here things. And anything else to come before council this evening? Councilmember Shade? Come to order, please.
You got an email yesterday? Because most of us could be out of town. The meeting was on the 14th. The meeting was scheduled for the 14th. The meeting was scheduled for the 14th. You know, some of them leave that night.
Right, so we are meeting on the 13th.
We're meeting on the 13th, and you got an email back.
Yes.
Right.
Did everybody see their email?
We got it. Except for all the-
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes, sir. Can I go back in time just about a month? Back to an original discussion we had back on, it looks like August 15th. And it was titled at that time, a discussion on our forfeiture of office should we move from the district. And I want to go back there if it's all right, and just have a quick stay on it and see if we want to have this required public hearing. And I'm saying that for several reasons. They're blowing up my phone. They're blowing up the emails. They're blowing up a whole bunch of stuff over in that area of town. And if I may,
Well, this would require amending the agenda to formally bring this up for discussion and adoption, so I would have to first have a motion to amend the agenda.
I'd like to make that motion, sir, to bring this up.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Can I just make a comment? I don't.
Do we have a second first? We have a second. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make-
Councilmember Seekings?
I didn't hear, I don't think Councilmember Wagner finished what he was going to say, but I know what he's going to say, and that is to request a hearing. I'm not sure we have to amend our agenda to do that. I went back and looked at the law today. I think that's something he can do in the regular course of business and has to be put on an agenda somewhere down the road. Amending an agenda to have a discussion about something that might be on an agenda somewhere down the road, I think will take us in a path that we don't need to go. I mean, I think if there's some request to have something on an agenda, council members can do that. If it's specific under section 2-19 of our code, which I think is that's where he's going, it clearly states it can be on an agenda on a request with a week's notice.
Right. So we'd be happy, if you make a request, we'd be happy to put it on the next agenda for the next meeting. If you want to discuss it tonight, I feel like we need to amend tonight's agenda, which will require a 2/3 vote. Any further discussion about the motion to amend the agenda? All in favor to amend the agenda to discuss this matter, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. I know you didn't get 2/3 on that, but
I think the
who voted aye?
nays won.
I have a question. It's an
Yes, sir.
amended agenda to do what? That's what I'm not really clear on.
I heard Councilmember Wagner say he wanted to ask for a reconsideration by council of having
Of the residency requirements.
of the residency requirement. So, I mean, that would take some action of council, which I view as being a change in our agenda.
In addition to the agenda.
Addition.
I thought his request was to have this put on an agenda to have a hearing.
No, you can do that, just as you said, council member.
Yeah, to
If-
amend the
if-
agenda tonight is what I'd asked for, but
That's what we understood. So what Councilmember Seeking said is correct. Many of you call us during the week when we're doing the agenda and ask that we put something on, and we do. Once the agenda is published, it's an amendment to the agenda. That should also be in the code.
Right. So who voted aye, just for the record? The motion failed.
Okay, there were 4 ayes. Councilmember Waring is
5.
away from his desk.
Okay.
Okay? I got 4. I got Councilmember White, Councilmember Wagner, Councilmember Gregory, and Councilmember Moody.
And Wilson.
Oh, Wilson, I didn't see your hand.
right here.
Mitchell, did you vote aye?
Okay, you voted aye now, Councilmember?
Okay.
Still trying to figure out
Okay.
what we're voting on. I'm not clear. To put on agenda
I
for
think,
discussion?
I think this is to amend the agenda, isn't it? We're talking for discussion.
To just have a discussion?
If you amend the agenda, it's in the code, we've done this many times. If you amend the agenda, then you get a 2/3 vote to amend the agenda after it's published.
No, I understand that. I just want to know what we're
Well,
amending it to do.
I can't answer your other questions.
If it's to have a discussion, we can have a discussion. I mean, but if it's to do anything more than
Councilmember
have a
Wagner
discussion,
can answer that question.
I heard him say that he wanted council to take some action tonight on the matter.
No, sir. I wanted to continue the discussion because on the 15th of August, it was really late. And this is why I'm wanting to talk about it. And it was very late. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We'd been there 4 hours and 22 minutes according to the tape. Plus, we'd had 3 hours of committee meetings before that. We were ready to go home and get something to eat. Anyway, that's the reason I want to discuss it. What we heard was from, since it was Councilmember Regal's, we heard from Councilmember Regal, Councilmember Shade, Councilmember Moody, and Councilmember Rodney Williams. But nowhere did we ever get to a point to where we could say something to the effect of, do we want to have this public hearing or not? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about just for about 5 minutes of y'all's time tonight. And then if you don't want to go forward, we'll throw a motion out there to have it. But I just want to set my record straight because I'm getting blown up. because we do share a board.
Well, just a point of order. I mean, just as we had 3 items on the agenda tonight to discuss a $100 million drainage plan and 2 other pieces of property, they were properly requested through the clerk's office and put on the agenda. And so,
9, 10, 11, okay. 6 of 11 is not enough, so
that's correct.
I will hush.
All right. Any other business come before us tonight?
I would request that it comes on the agenda next.
Yeah, I do too.
Councilmember White.
I've actually gotten quite a few inquiries as well. The reason why I'd like to really finish the discussion that quite frankly never, in my opinion, was fully vetted and heard. But just to clarify, if you're willing to have it on the agenda as a council member, you can request to have it added to that council member's agenda. And so now would be, I think, the appropriate time to go ahead and state that you'd like to have it on the agenda.
I would love to have it on the next agenda.
Done.
Please. That way, Ms. Darlington won't waste a perfectly good article.
That's right. Done. It will be on the next agenda. Is there any other business come before us tonight? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you.